The good news is that at this point in our common history and that of the globalized world, we face a truly unique opportunity to create a new strategic, political, and economic framework for the 21st century. And I'm talking about TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership Agreement. By creating the largest allied market in the world, TTIP will strengthen economies on both sides of the Atlantic and create jobs for Americans, for Germans, for all Europeans. It will reduce regulatory barriers. And perhaps of greatest importance, I am convinced that it will provide the strategic foundation for a broader global pronouncement of the common values we share. The evolution of NATO transformed international relations. And just as the new NATO transcends security issues, TTIP is more than just a trade agreement. Like NATO, TTIP will be a cornerstone of transatlantic relations. The broad economic cooperation that it represents will also put in place a new framework for global peace and prosperity. It goes without saying that this is in everybody's interest. Will it be easy? Of course not. We all know how hard it will be, but it represents a huge and important vision, and each and every one of us in this room here tonight has a responsibility to work towards a successful conclusion of this agreement. While serving in the, you can clap if you want. Give me a chance to take a drink. While serving in the Clinton White House in the 1990s, as you heard, I had the privilege of managing the administration's efforts to secure congressional approval of the Uruguay round of the GATT. I worked closely with a young White House fellow named Michael Froman. And I now look forward to working with U.S. Trade Representative Michael Froman on TTIP-related issues. But perhaps more importantly, I look forward to working together with all of you. One of the lessons I learned from this White House experience was the importance of open and honest discussion and the critical need to start with the vast areas upon which we find agreement and then build on those throughout the course of negotiations. In terms of TTIP and discussions regarding standards, yes, here too, the United States and Europe have some differences of opinion. But think of how far we have come. For instance, in the transatlantic context, there is much more agreement today on the environmental and the labor issues that dominated the GATT negotiations more than 20 years ago. Think also of food standards. Last year, the United States and the European Union signed a historic agreement regarding the equivalent recognition of organic food standards. This new agreement will not only expand market access for organic producers, reducing duplicative requirements and certification costs on both sides of the ocean, but it will help develop a better and stronger foundation for promoting organic agriculture. There are, of course, ongoing differences in perception and opinion about food standards in other areas. But let's be honest, folks. Both in Europe and in the United States, we are very fortunate to be able to sit down to very good and very healthy meals with food that may have gotten to the table differently, but is perfectly safe. Let's remember that we share the same basic goals of protecting health through food safety. And as one of my favorite philosophy professors used to say, there are many roads up the same mountain. And so in that vein, as we continue to evolve our partnership for the 21st century, we together can identify opportunities to explore the many roads where Germans and Americans can come together. In the business context, hundreds of thousands of German citizens are employed by American firms, some of which are here tonight, and vice versa, some of which are here tonight. We need to build on that. We have much to learn from one another in the areas of environmental technology and renewables, and we can be partners in confronting the increasing dangers of global warming. And in one area that is very important to Kimberly and me as the parents of 3 wonderful teenage girls, we need to reach out and build stronger bonds between young Americans and young Germans. I thought it was very telling that Chancellor Merkel commemorated the 52nd anniversary of the building of the Berlin Wall by giving a history lesson to a group of high school students. Her goal was to emphasize and bring to life the principles of freedom and democracy in that period of Germany's history. And I mentioned it upon my arrival at Tegel last week, or a week ago. When reading about her visit on the plane ride to Berlin, it struck me that there is an entire generation of Germans and Americans who did not live through that searing experience of the second half of the 20th century that bonded our two nations together. If we are going to keep strong the bridge created by those bonds, we need to reach those generations. Our vibrant transatlantic relationship is not an inherited trait. Its value needs to be transmitted from one generation to the next. Certainly over the coming years, when talking to young Germans about our relationship as two nations, Kimberly and I will seek to bring to life our common values based on freedom and democracy and the incredible history that we share. And we can do this in lots of ways. We can connect the energies of young entrepreneurs and innovators, whether from California's Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley here in Berlin. And we can do it by celebrating the dynamism of our respective movements in film and the arts, which are so often driven by young people. There is much we can learn from each other by building on the creative energy and the innovation, training, and exchanges of our post-Cold War generations. As parents, Kimberly and I are very well aware that the early interests of young people are important and that we often see them come full circle as lives progress. We intend to include youth in all of our public diplomacy efforts. I understand that by the way, that the Atlantik-Brücke has an excellent Young Atlanticists program. You can count on us to help you expand that network. And I hope we can count on you to brainstorm with us about new ways that we might do that and build new bridges with this new generation. So this will be, yeah. Thank you. So this will be our priority, to strengthen and multiply the bridges between our two countries and across the Atlantic through renewed strategic, economic, and interpersonal initiatives. Working together, we can ensure that the ties that bound us during the second half of the 20th century will be transformed in ways that will guarantee the evolution of our indispensable interconnections throughout the coming years and decades. And finally, on a personal level, I spoke of people's lives coming full circle. Well, I started studying German in junior high because of my family. A few weeks ago, Secretary Kerry swore me into this office on a German family Bible that my grandmother passed down to my now 87-year-old father, who is a pastor. Here, too, my family and I have come full circle as Kimberly and I, in turn, pass down our German heritage to our three daughters. And I, with all humility, proudly embrace the honor and the responsibility of the important tasks before us. Es ist eine ganz besondere Freude, diesen Tag mit Ihnen zu verbringen. Ich freue mich auf unsere Zusammenarbeit in den kommenden Jahren. Vielen Dank.